Hello and welcome to this new episode of Daughters of Narcissistic Mothers. 3 ways a narcissistic mother can destroy your confidence. That's gonna be quite the ride. This is some really important episode, and I am really excited to share all of this with you. First of all, though, I want to, as always, thank you so much for being here, for sharing this time with me, for doing this for yourself, because you're not doing this for me, you're doing this for yourself. And I want to honor you, celebrate you, bow to you. It's amazing what you're doing by being here, giving this time for yourself, to explore, to feel into wounds that are deep, that are uncomfortable, and that are the cause of so much in our lives. So to be here it's to be celebrated. And yeah, so thank you for being here. And of course, thank you. Every time you leave a review, every time you share this podcast with other women, you are helping not only yourself, but a whole lot of other women out there that are in the same situation, that have similar wounds, that have had a very difficult relationship with their mothers, like me, like you, and that need to hear this. So thanks for that. It's so appreciated. Okay, let's get back to the episode. So before we dive into the 3 ways a narcissistic mother can destroy your confidence, I want to remind you, in the last episode I spoke about the 2 pillars supporting your healing journey from maternal narcissistic abuse into healing. And the 2 pillars were commitment and community. And if you haven't listened to that episode yet, catch up with it. It's episode 15. In that episode, I also mentioned that the pillars are actually 3. But the third one would require its own episode. So here we are. In this episode, we're gonna go into what is the 3rd pillar for your healing journey. But first, let me ask you a question. So, how much support have you received from your mother when you wanted to try something new as a child? Or even later on as an adult? How much support are you still receiving from your mother? Take a moment to feel into that. Now, if your answer is something along these lines, she always slowed down to listen when I had a new idea, no matter how far out it was, and she always asked how she could support me, and she listened some more. My mother always made me feel safe, and if the idea didn't get through to become a success, she was always there for me. So I learned that there are no mistakes, but only experiences, and the so-called failure of an idea doesn't make me a failure of a person. Well, if that's your answer, you might be listening to the wrong podcast because that's wonderful mothering. Your mother was not a narcissist. That's amazing. And yeah, I want to celebrate that. That was not my experience. Actually, when I wrote this answer, like I had tears in my eyes. I nearly had tears now reading it to you, because wow, how would have my life been different up until this point if my mother actually showed up that way? But she didn't. So you're here listening. So my guess is that your answer would be more along one of those 3 types that I'm going to tell you now. So number 1, when you're asked how much support have you received from your mother when you wanted to try something new as a child, one answer could be, I received absolutely no support. My mother criticized my idea and myself She told me I would never be able to go through with it, that I wasn't good enough to do any of that, of what I wanted, that it was ridiculous for me to even think about it. She got upset that I even think about such nonsense, and she laughed at me. Okay, so that's one possible answer. Another one, another answer that these are answers I'm getting from you guys. I'm getting them when I'm speaking to you in the free intro calls, when I'm connecting with you via emails and messages that I'm receiving. These are the answers I'm getting, and I've been getting even when, before diving deeper into this work, I was still working with women, and obviously mother wounds were coming out. These were the answers I was getting and still get. So number two would be, it's hard to say. She would be very supportive for some things, but at the same time she would put me down on others. I never knew what I would get support with. Okay? And the third type of answer is, I wouldn't know. She always let me do whatever I wanted. She was very busy, so I had to get sorted by myself if I wanted to do anything. Okay, so these three answers. Does one of these answers fit your case more? There might be even be a mix. As always, when I say that all the time in these episodes, when we go, okay, there's like a 1, 2, 3, or there's like 5 steps, or it's never so defined. Sometimes it is. There can be cases, like I know where I was with my mother. It was the absolute zero support at times, and then at other times there was the, maybe I'll give you some support because it's appropriate to what I believe is right, and we're gonna go into that. But so, like, sometimes it's clear and sometimes it's a bit of a mix, so don't get too worried if you can't identify exactly where you're at with this, but it's just to give you an idea. Okay, so when I first came across maternal narcissism in my journey into figuring out my own life, I read that a narcissistic mother destroys the child's confidence. I certainly have suffered of lack of confidence for the best part of my life. I still, if I focus on it that way, and we're gonna look into this episode, we're gonna see how to change that approach completely. But if I focused on it that way, I still don't have confidence. So I really needed to understand this more, and I really looked into it, and I checked into my own experience, and I have been talking to many women in the past 15 years, and by researching too, putting it all together, I realized that there are 3 main ways that your mother can indeed, seemingly, then we'll go into it, but bear with me, seemingly destroy your confidence. So if we go with the 3 answers, the 3 stereotypical answers that I gave you earlier: 1, no support, absolutely. Number 2, it's hard to say, I was supported at times and I was really put down at others. And number 3, I have no idea if my mother was even supportive because she just wasn't present and she wasn't really giving me any. So going with those, there's the 3 ways. The first one is outright explicit put downs of the child, with rejection of any new idea or attempt at trying something new. Sort of like along these lines: who put those silly notions into your head? Or even, I'd love to know how you even come up with something so stupid. It can be very, very explicit, and or even, you are never going to make it work. So the overall message is, you're never going to make it because you're a failure to begin with, a broken child, so don't even bother. Okay, that's the underlying message that comes through every time the child is looking to do something new. Now, this can be really like looking to go to a new game in the playground, like looking to play with glue and new things and do something different with her toys. Like it's we're talking about basics, going exploring a different corner of the garden or of the park. Okay, And then as you grow up, that just becomes like, okay, I would like to try this school rather than that. I would like to try this job rather than that. Okay, so it's all encompassing in the experience of the person, of the daughter of the narcissistic mother, in the entire journey from child and into growing up. The second way is, as do you remember the second answer, sometimes I was supported and sometimes I wasn't. So it's selective support. The mother will support the child only when the idea, topic, or activity fits in the list that she believes is right, good, or okay. So the mother has an idea of what's approved, what she resonates with, what she thinks is right, and everything else is either ridiculed or made seem completely wrong. So this, obviously, you can understand how this leaves the child confused. If that was your case, that's really confusing. It might be super unclear when you're going to get the support or when you're not, until it gets to the point when the child, because our child self was super smart. Okay, super smart. And she found ways to survive. So what does that child do? She learns the list that the mother approves and makes it her own. Okay? She goes, okay, I know that these things I'm okay with. My mom is going to resonate with these things. So these become your own beliefs, to the point of really believing that that's your personality, that you really resonate with those things. And this leaves the freedom of choosing very limited to what the mother approves. You don't have the full spectrum of choices in front of you anymore. You only have what your mother actually approved of. I'll give you an example, just because this can be a little bit tricky. So from my own experience on this, so I've been horse riding since I was a child, and my mother has always been the instructor. That was her job. That still is her job. And so for decades, that has actually been the main point of connection between us. I knew that if I spoke of horses and stuff related to that, she would engage in the conversation with me. And even within that topic, I knew what she would resonate with and what she wouldn't. So I knew exactly what to say and what to leave out of the conversation. I had learned. But at some point, I became really interested in a different type of approaching the horses. It was natural horsemanship. It was like a really gentle method, which is still what I do. I still have horses and I still work with them that way. But I was about 17 at the time, I think, something like that. And I remember mentioning it to her, with this illusion that maybe I can still find connection and I can still bring something that is a little bit more myself forward. Bad idea. That was dismissed as a pile of nonsense, not worth talking about. Like, literally, I'm being polite now. It was put down quite extremely, and I was told how, of course, the only reason I would be interested in something so ridiculous and stupid is because I was completely useless at doing the more serious stuff. I was probably just too afraid of horses to do the serious things, and so I would go into that crap. You see what I mean? That made me abandon that for a long time. I actually went completely off horses for an entire year of my life. I didn't go near them because there was confusion. So that's what happens, and that can be an example. The third way, and this is now super tricky to identify, is when your mother is the third answer. Do you remember that? I don't know if my mom was supportive. She was just that busy. She let me do whatever I want. Complete freedom. Okay? If you've received complete freedom, but with that complete freedom comes no support and no safety net. Because that's the catcher. Now, this can seem good, it can seem better than the others, because, You have complete freedom. But it is, in fact, just as toxic because you're told, do whatever you want, do whatever you think is right, do whatever because I'm too busy to sit down and listen to you, sort of meaning, don't waste my time with such blooming ideas. I don't want to know. You just go on and do whatever. But it also comes with, and don't you dare come to me if it doesn't work. Because if I'm too busy to listen to you when you have a new idea, when you want to do something new, then I'm also too busy to support you if that actually doesn't work. So no safety net, which for a child is essential. Or even do whatever. This is one of my favorites. But remember, I'm always here when it doesn't work out. Can you see how covert that is? It's not I'm always here if it doesn't work out. Okay? That's that look, that can happen. If something doesn't work out, I'm here. I'm going to be here to support you if it doesn't work out, and we're going to see how we can make it work, That's one way, but I'm always here when it doesn't work out. I remember my mother telling me that about my marriage. Oh, when he leaves you, remember I'm here. He hasn't. So but when, it's a when, okay? So there is an assumption of your failure, and she lets you know. So this can go all the way to complete neglect, or even, as we say, very covert put downs. And again, as I said, I find this is the trickiest to be aware of, because it does give the illusion of support when you actually receive all that freedom. I sort of go and do whatever you want. It can be tricky, and it can be tricky also because it can lead you to believe that if you're actually feeling confused, if you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling like you're not good enough, it actually has nothing to do with your mother, because your mother actually allowed you a heap space. So you are the one who's messed up all on your own. Can you see how tricky that is? Where it's not true. It's not true. You as a child, if you're resonating with this third type or way your mother can destroy your confidence, you didn't receive the guidance, the safety, and the support. That freedom was an illusion. It wasn't freedom because she 100% trusted your capacity. It was freedom because she couldn't be bothered. For her own reasons. We're not here to blame. This, as always, this podcast is not a war against mothers. I don't go to war with my mother. I used to do that, but that was not very helpful at all for me and for her, but definitely not for me. So this is not a war against mother. This is not to blame them for all the shit that's going down in our lives. And this is not to be victims of, my mother was such and such and I'm the poor little victim. It's none of that. You're not going to find any of that in here. So if that's what you're looking for, again, that's not the podcast. I am not coming from that place. But it's to understand. All of it is purely to understand. Once you become aware of the mechanism, once you can see the behavior that your mother had for what it was and not as a reflection of how broken and messed up or a bad child you are or were, that's the healing. That's what changes everything. That is what changed everything for me. So whatever about what your mother's story was or is, her wounds, her past, the reasons why she started behaving the way she behaves, there can be tons of compassion towards all of that. And I actually invite you always to carry some of that inside, to find it. Sometimes it's really tricky to find, but it's important. It balances things out. But that doesn't mean we don't look at it with taking the veil off the eyes and go, okay, the completely outright lack of support and explicit put downs, the selective support that, well, I was only supported if I did what she told me, and the complete freedom but with no support and covered put downs. None of that is good stuff. All of that is toxic, and all of that has had effects in how I then approach life today as an adult. And once we become aware of that, we can work on it. So, as I mentioned in another episode, narcissism has a spectrum. I want to say this is important. It manifests in different ways and with different intensities. So a mother can be a full-on narcissist. She can display narcissistic traits. She can have narcissistic behaviors in certain circumstances, or be a covert narcissist. So there's different ways this can show up in your life, or that has shown up in your experience as a child. So I deeply discourage putting them on a scale from more to less abusive. I did that, and it truly was not helpful. So I want to say that because it seems, when you go with the 3 different types, it seems like, well, the one that gives explicit put downs, it's a lot more abusive than the one that just has a bit of a selective support. So you can kind of feel that there is like a worse and a better. It doesn't work like that. I did that with my mother abuse, thinking for years and years that it wasn't much, as she didn't do as bad as I've heard others being treated. I mean, yeah, she's put the hands on me a couple of times, but I've never been left bleeding on the floor, like, so. But maybe that's just not as bad as other people have had it. Why would I be so messed up? Okay, I've suffered sexual abuse as a child, but because it did not classify it as rape, well, then I believed it was less bad. And again, I didn't look into it, I didn't address it. I felt that I was broken all by myself, and not because of the abuse, because that didn't feel on a scale from 1 to 10 that it was at a 10 of intensity. So in both cases, I felt I should not have been so traumatized. So something was wrong with me inherently, and that's actually really not the case. So if you have been feeling that way, if you have done some comparisons with others within scale of abuse and stuff, that's just not helpful. And it really, that's just not how it works, actually. I've learned lots. I listen to Gabor Mate a lot. I don't know if you have come across his work. He's an amazing man that works with trauma, and he says that trauma is not what happens to you, but it is what happens inside of you as a result of what happens to you. So it's not actually the thing that has happened, whether your mother was outright beating you or whether she was covertly emotionally abusing you. There isn't a worse or a better or a more intense or less intense. It's your experience of it in the moment, what happens inside of you, that matters. That's where the trauma happens. Okay? And this awareness changed my life completely. It's actually what got me to start really looking into maternal narcissism and stuff like that, because yeah, the other way just was not helpful. So keep that in mind. There's no hierarchy of abuse. There's only what has happened inside of you as a result. But what's all of this got to do with the third pillar? I'm getting to it. So let's go back to that phrase that a narcissistic mother destroys her child confidence. Okay, I want to go back, because when I remember reading that and going, I don't tend to go with, or I don't like anything that tells me that something in me has been destroyed, because that sounds a bit final. Yeah, if it's destroyed, how are we gonna, yeah, we can build it back, but that's hard. That's really, really difficult. Yeah, if it's destroyed completely, it's not even disassembled, it's destroyed. That sounds way too final. So looking into it more, as I said, I really needed to look into it for myself, and I did, and I came to discover that a narcissistic mother destroys her child's confidence. That's actually incorrect to say, and why that is. Because when a child is trying something new, the child doesn't have confidence yet. Okay? And I've looked into it, of course, but I've also seen it with my own kids, like growing up. They want to go a little bit further away from you at the park, but they're still looking at you. They're kind of going. There's that look of, how is my mom on this? Like, am I okay to do this? Like, is it safe? And if my mother is relaxed, and if she's smiling at me, and if she's, well, then I'll take another step further. Or, they're still checking because they don't have the confidence. Confidence is built by trying and succeeding, or failing and realizing it's not the end of the world, and then trying again until success is achieved. That builds confidence. Confidence can't be there before you try something new, because you don't know the outcome. So you cannot have confidence that that's going to work. So it's more accurate to say that a narcissistic mother with any of the 3 behaviors described earlier stifles the child's natural capacity to develop confidence. Does that make sense? Are you following me with this? So the child doesn't have the confidence because it's trying something new. It's not knowing, she or he is not knowing if it's going to succeed or fail. And by failure, I just mean having a learning experience. I'm not using the word in the negative connotation of it. Okay, so succeed or failing. And the success, or even the lack of success, but with the support, the safety net, and the capacity to try again, that builds the confidence. And that's what naturally would happen. Yeah, if you were in, like, if your parents, if your mother was actually the one that gave the first answer, the one that I said gave me tears in my eyes when I wrote that if your mother behaved that way, if she listened and she was there and she listened some more and then asked you, how can I support you, and then was there when you failed to tell you, well, you're not a bad person because you failed, it's just an experience, get back up and try again, that builds the confidence in the child. Okay, so she stifles the child's natural capacity to develop confidence. What a narcissistic mother erodes, and again, note, I am not saying destroys, okay? I'm saying erodes, is the force behind starting something new, okay? Behind making your own decisions and choices, the force behind going for the vision or dream you have, and even the force behind the capacity of having a vision at all. And that force is courage. Courage. And that is the 3rd pillar. So see, I got there. Took me a while to get there, but I got there. we needed to go through this journey together to get to this point, okay? Courage. And I said it's the 3rd pillar because I left it for last to give it a full episode, but in my opinion, it's in fact the 1st. Okay? When I speak to the 3 pillars of your healing journey is courage, commitment, and community. Courage comes first. Okay? The word courage has the same root as cuore. Cuore is the Italian word for heart. It is in fact that force in your heart that allows you to go for something when you don't know the outcome. So in that place where you still can't be confident because you don't know the outcome, what gets you to take the step anyways, that's courage. Okay? So it's not confidence you need, but courage. You cannot build confidence before you try something. I couldn't be confident being here with you sharing this podcast. I needed courage to start it. And then as more episodes come out, as I'm getting your feedback, as I'm getting your reviews, as I'm finding my voice more and more, that's confidence is building. But if I was waiting to have the confidence to start it, I'd still be there, hemming and hamming in front of my computer, going, should I try or should I not? Okay? Because as I said, confidence is built with the experience of succeeding or even not succeeding, but realizing that failure doesn't mean the end of the world and you can try again and learn from it. So confidence is not the starter. Wanting confidence before having tried something is like trying to start a fire without the matches. Okay? The fire starter is your courage. So at this point, you might say, okay, that's all lovely. Thank you for all of this beautiful explanation, but where do I get the courage if my mother destroyed it in me when I was a child? Fair enough. And that's why I didn't use the word destroy when I said that your mother, I didn't say destroys courage, I said erodes. Okay? And the good news is that she didn't destroy it. And how can I know that for sure? Why did I use the word erode rather than destroy? Because in my experience, it doesn't matter who I'm talking to. Okay? Despite how unconfident the person in front of me feels, and she might say she feels, and she believes she is unconfident and all of that, there are always acts of courage that can be found after slowing down a bit. Always. So an act of courage is anytime you do something without being certain of the outcome. So go back and look at your life so far. How many of those have you done? And even if you just want to go, make it simpler and just look at your day, okay? Today, your day today. Slow down for a moment and go through your day so far and see what acts of courage you can already find, however apparently small. Again, there's no scale here. It doesn't matter if it seems like tiny. I'm not talking about acts of courage of going out and saving the world. We're talking about every day. Every day. They're little things, but they're potent. I can offer you some examples. The most basic of it all. You got up this morning, didn't you? Unless you're still in bed listening to the podcast because it's very early morning for you, that's okay. But I know you are gonna get up. And that's courageous. Because you never know what the day will bring you. You don't know the outcome. You're not already at the evening knowing exactly how your day went. You're in the morning and you're getting up out of bed. That takes courage. And there are times that is really the most courageous act. I know, I've been there. I've been in seriously dark places in my life. And yeah, getting up in the morning was like, it took a lot of courage. A lot of courage. Another example, while you are listening to this podcast, that is courageous. It is a courageous act of self-love. You don't know what might emerge from it. You don't know what I'm going to be talking about today and what it might trigger in you. This could bring up tears for you at the end of an episode. There could be like a true difficult, challenging emotional journey going on. I know I've had that listening to podcasts, listening to different mentors of mine, engaging in a women's circle. God, that took some amount of courage for me to get into the first one. But you're here listening anyways, aren't you? That's courageous. So your mother didn't destroy your courage. What happened is you had to redirect it. Okay, instead of going mad looking for new ideas and doing new cool things and learning about your identity and developing an identity and developing a confidence that's the natural growth, you couldn't do that because your mother was behaving the way she was. So you redirected that courage into finding protective strategies to cope and survive. Because it takes courage to do that too. That brought you to here, so that's bloody courageous. You know, going and going with, okay, you know what, I'm just not going to go for it with all those things, but I'm going to choose things that just keep me safe. That is courageous because that chooses life. Ultimately, that's the only way we have to survive those times. So what I want you to take from this episode is that courage is a fire in your heart that can't be put out. Can't. Might feel small, tiny, just an ember. Fear might feel a lot bigger than the courage you believe you have available. And I get that. I get that. I've been so scared. So scared. Like trembling in the corner, wanting to crawl into a hole. Please don't make me do this. This is too much. And that's okay. That's to be honored. I'm not talking about forcing you into situations that are frightening just so you're proving you have courage. Don't get me wrong here. Okay? It's always a gentle process. We're always talking about being kind and take it one step at a time. But it's to say that courage is there. Even in those moments, it is actually there. So I invite you to take note of the daily acts of courage you perform. You showing up like you are every day is an act of courage. As we said, the child in you, she was so courageous, developing so many strategies to bring you here, to this day, to today. Honor that. It's courage. Every smile you gift the world is an act of courage, because you don't know if the person you're smiling to is going to smile back. And that can hurt. When they don't, we can feel rejection. So when we're doing it, we're putting ourselves on the line every time. That's courageous. When you say I love you to someone, well, that's bloody courageous, because you don't know the answer is going to come. Every moment you take for yourself to heal, to look into yourself, to go deep, it's an act of courage, because you don't know what doors you open. And it can be uncomfortable, but you go for it. Every tear you vulnerably shed is an act of courage. Every time you're vulnerable, it's courageous. Because when you're vulnerable, even if you're on your own, in your room, you're still showing your underbelly to that part of yourself that can hack you, because you have both in you. We all have. So the point is, it's a fire in you that no one can extinguish. And I know that for a fact. I actually really do. From experience, from my own experience, I remember just like feeling like at the bottom of the barrel, the worst place I've been, and still is there. I wasn't too aware of it back then. I didn't have all this incredible language back then, but looking back, I know it was there. Because I'm here. I'm here today. You're here today. So that courage was there. We whatever the first step was to get out of that hole, we took it. Because we wouldn't be here otherwise. Okay? So that courage was there. So now the next step is directing that fire where you want it to be. So not anymore into surviving, but into thriving. To dive in, to go deep into yourself, into the fullness of you and of your life now. It's like direct your courage, like an example I really love. I am surrounded by nature where I am, and I am surrounded, thankfully, in summer by butterflies. I love them, and I've had the chance to observe the full process from the caterpillars to the chrysalis to the butterfly. It's amazing. Okay? And it's blooming and comfortable too. If you've ever seen what the caterpillar has to go through to form the cocoon, you know it's uncomfortable. So you want to direct your courage like the caterpillar that turns into a chrysalis, not knowing it will be a butterfly when it emerges. Yeah? But it does it anyways. Why? Because that courage is there, and there is an inner knowing behind that courage that is telling you. I know that there's that voice in you. It can be deep down, it can be a little bit hidden, but it's there. It's there, okay? Bit of a primal energy there, okay? That tells you that it's better to try and fail than to live regretting not ever having tried. And I know the caterpillar didn't have anyone telling it, you're not good enough to be a butterfly. I know that. I get that. We were blessed with this mothers that told us that we would never become a butterfly because we just didn't have it in us. And I know that that just downplays it a little bit. I get that. But that's what makes it, now jokes apart, that's what makes it a journey. Okay, and I'm not going to lie to you. I never have here, and I never will. um this is a journey, and it's uncomfortable and challenging as well as rewarding. Okay, and that's why we need these three pillars. We need courage to take the first step into what you don't yet know. Okay, to take that first step into the unknown, into the depth of yourselves, into your wounds. You gotta have courage. You gotta tap into that courage, to that fire starter. You gotta access that. Then you need commitment to stick with it when it gets uncomfortable, because if you don't commit to it, it's gonna get uncomfortable. And it's sometimes it feels easier. It really isn't, but it feels easier. It seems easier to just go back to the old ways than to stick through the uncomfortable time and emerge the other side. Okay, there's plenty of leaves. I might as well just stay a caterpillar. Why go through all that crap? And I don't even know if I'm gonna become a butterfly. The far side, that's where you commit. You find ways to commit to yourself. And then the community, because the community holds you and supports you when you need it. There's accountability, so that helps you with your commitment. It's very hard to do it on your own, but when you have someone that holds you into account lovingly, it's so much easier to commit, to stay committed. And also, you want a community that celebrates you each time that you face a challenge and emerge the far side like the warrior woman you are. So the community is not just there to catch you when you fall, they're also there to celebrate you when you rise. And the entire journey and all the phases of it in between. So courage, commitment, and community. And when you feel like you don't have confidence, it's because you can't have it until you've tried and you've built it. And that is something that everyone can do. We can all do it. You can do it. I've done it. If you knew me before I started this podcast, if you were here with me in my home during the process that I went through to realize that this was actually what set me on fire, that I really needed to speak to this. And then when I got to that realization, the process I had to go through to actually stick with it to the end and create this podcast and start speaking and publish the first episode and sit in front of my computer with the microphone on and start talking to a screen that doesn't give me any feedback. I and then face the possible consequences with a family member hearing that that's what I'm doing. I had to block my mother from all of the platform, obviously, because that would have been a little bit much. I don't think to this day she knows what I'm doing. I don't care, but maybe she does. But that all of that, that's all about tapping into courage, being committed, and having a community within all of that supported me, held me, celebrated me. So that's why I'm speaking to this, because I've been through it, and I continue go through it. Every time that there is something new I want to do, it's a dogfight, because I was taught I could not do it. That belief in me that tells me I'm not good enough, it's quite strong. And every single time, if now I want to do something, I want to publish my books, well, I'll have to go through the same process again. So all of this to say that these three pillars are essential. When you open up to the courage that is in you and you learn to access it again and to direct it where you want. When you find ways to be committed to yourself and to what you want, and when you find a community that is the right one for you and that supports you, holds you, celebrates you, and challenges you all at the right time, all of this becomes like so much easier. Not easy in the sense that it's never going to be uncomfortable, as I said, and challenging, but it is so much easier than if you were to do it all on your own without all of that and without all of this awareness. Okay. Oh, I knew this was going to be an important episode. I felt it. I knew it. It's essential. It's one I'd be referring to for a long time. I know that. So listen to it again and again. Feel into it. Get it into your bones. And remember, the women's circles are starting in September. The next couple of weeks. The waiting lists are still open. You can access them by going onto the link in the description and fill the application form and book the free intro call with me. That puts you on the waiting list. And in that call, you also get to connect with me. You get to ask whatever questions you have about the circles, and I get to see how I can support you directly, you, like one-on-one you, in the best way possible for you. So that's how you find community. Yeah. And by taking a step, by actually filling in the application form, booking the call, turning up for the call, that's your commitment. And I know it takes courage to take the first step, but I also know you have it in buckets because you're here listening to this. You're here today, you got to hear, and you have it. And yeah, I'm gonna leave you with this and sending you a lot of love. Bye for now.